within Chandlers Lane, but we thought really the other two buildings, even though they are affected by what happened to your building and your homes, aren't affected the same way all of you are. And your questions and the issues that are going to be discussed today are really the important ones. I've been kind of running these meetings. I'm Chuck Schulman with Carlisle Management. Tonight we also have here Steve Ott, who is the association's attorney.
Good evening.
So we have Mike Hickel, who is with Alex Sill Company, which is the public adjuster that was hired to negotiate on your behalf with the insurance carrier, Berkshire Hathaway. We have Mark Soroka, who is the insurance agent who placed the insurance with Berkshire Hathaway. And then Jay Fragan on the end is from our office, who has been coordinating everything with the architects, the builders, doing the bidding, putting everything out to get the information that we're going to be able to provide you. The other components to all this are that we used a architect, Gary Fisher, after soliciting bids and getting 4 bids. Jay will talk a little bit about the range of costs that we got in the bidding process, both from the architects as well as from the contractors that we've talked with. We did the same thing after the architect finished their drawings, put it out to bid to contractors who built and build currently buildings like yours, so that we had people who were both capable as well as knowledgeable of building a multifamily structure like yours, both condominium and rentals, so that they could really, do justice to the building, because we are going to build a building that looks like the other buildings, but it's going to be materially different because there are code changes and other things that we need to comply with in doing this. With that being said, I just wanted to go through kind of a timeline of what's gone on up until now, since it's taken really so long to get to where we are today. Initially, after the fire, Berkshire Hathaway Guard, who is the insurance carrier for the association, brought in a company that did the cause and origin control and investigation, and they then coordinated everything with all of the different insurance carriers that were involved. And there were, I think, over 20 cause and origin investigators for the different insurance carriers on behalf of each of you. There were only, I think, 3 owners who did not have insurance. So, we'll get to that later too. But during that whole cause and origin investigation, it actually took 9 weeks for everyone to get in, to do what they were going to do, to get out. The state fire marshal was the first in. They got all of the records. They got the fire alarm records, the testing. They got the video from the black box in the building that had all of the data from the cameras that were in the building. They were done probably in about 10 to 15 days with their report. They never came up with a formal cause. We know where the origin of the fire was, but never the formal cause of the fire. And then the cause and origin people each came up with their own answers, but it was never a formal finding. And the company that was hired by Berkshire Hathaway never rendered a formal opinion on the cause and origin. That held us up a tremendous amount of time because the city needed to have a cause and origin before they would start working with us on moving forward. The city has been great, though, in everything that they did, both the day of the fire and then for probably 6 or 8 weeks afterwards. They were really involved and very helpful in everything, including pushing the fire marshal. The fire chief, who's has since stepped down and taken another position within the city, was just amazing in everything he did that night and afterwards again, as well as been the mayor and your council person. Lee Fenrick had been in touch with us on a regular basis to make sure of everything that we're doing, following up, seeing what he could help with. The city has been really bent over backwards. We did run into somewhat of a loggerhead with the building department, with the drawings once we started getting things underway. And that basically is because We were able to get the original drawings from the original architect who was in Colorado, and we got them on CAD, so we were able to cut down dramatically what the cost would have been done to redraw the building for us. But they would not get involved, and the city would not allow an architect out of state to do the work this time around. In doing the drawings this time, we had to take into account something called Ordinance of Law, which is an insurance coverage that Mark had us place on the property, which provides for any changes between when the building was built in codes and where we are today. So we have $250,000 worth of coverage. So those things that were not in the, were not code compliant now, based on the original construction, will be brought up to the current codes. So there are going to be some changes. In doing the drawings, and Jay can probably talk a little bit more about this later on, but there were a number of iterations of drawings, because originally, when the architect, Gary Fisher, drew the building, he then submitted the plans. The city kicked them back twice. So there are actually 3 sets of plans that he had to draw, which probably took two months, 2.5 months, because it kept going to the city, who would then tell us to make revisions and changes. So it dragged out. The process was not an easy one. And all of this had to be done after the demolition took place, according to the city. So one of the other factors that we're also in the middle of, just so you're aware, is that during this whole process, they did the demolition. We left, as everyone knows, the elevator shaft, and we tried to leave the plumbing where it came through the slab. But during the demolition, much of the foundation around the slab was damaged. The slab itself is fine, is in actually pretty good shape. And many of the pipes that came through were supposed to be longer than they are, so we have an issue with that, and we're actually addressing that now with the demolition contractor, so that the association doesn't have to pay for an additional cost to try and bring that up. We saved a little over $240,000 by saving the slab, but it's going to cost a fair amount of money to make that slab truly usable. I started to mention the elevator shaft. The state elevator inspector came in and said, well, there's no way we're letting you use this shaft because it's been compromised by the fire. Well, it wasn't compromised by the fire, so we're in the process of working on that. We think that's already been resolved. Fortunately, it's only been a couple of weeks with that, but we think that's been resolved, in that the fire never came anywhere actually up to or close to the steel of the elevator shaft. We do have, or we can get confirmation from engineering stress tests on that to show that's the case, so that we don't have to start over with that. That's not an enormous cost, but it is a cost. And we want to try and keep things going along now finally a little faster. And by keeping that shaft, it will substantially speed up the process, just from the standpoint of the elevator company knowing exactly what they're building, and not just building it off of drawings. So one of the issues that we'll address a little bit, and Mike Hickel will address that, is the negotiations with the insurance carrier that we've had ongoing, and we are still deep in negotiations with them, even though we have an amount that they've already told us they're going to pay, but we feel it should be more than what they're offering, as well as he'll explain how the numbers each of you received regarding your individual suites were derived. And I think there's a misimpression in regards to those numbers, that they are hard and fast numbers that you have to live with, as well as the work has to be this way. It doesn't. And Mike can explain a little bit about that to you. The other thing that I wanted to mention, the company that is going to be doing the construction work for the common areas is a company called PCS and Build. They are a company that has done many buildings like this. They are in the process of doing another in Greater Cleveland, but they work all over the country doing buildings of this sort in commercial construction. So they are more than competent to handle this kind of project. and have been aggressive in regards to it. Jay can talk about their pricing as compared to everybody else. And then the one final thing I wanted to mention, and I don't want to put Mark on the spot in regards to this because he is an insurance agent, but people have been calling us and talking about their individual coverages, which he really can't address since your agent placed your coverage. But many people have said that they don't have adequate coverage to rebuild entirely. And that is something that unfortunately we really need to kind of look back at why the coverage is what it is for each of the individual units. Many people had more than adequate coverage, but some don't. And I guess the question is whether a decision was made, if it was done to cut the coverage for the interior for premium reasons, or if it was done because the agent didn't advise you properly. And that's something we can't really address, but for those people who said they have, $25,000 or $30,000 worth of coverage, it's going to make it very difficult for you. And we understand that, and we're going to try and assist however we can with that, but unfortunately the association can't make up the difference. Legally can't, but also financially won't be able to, based on the monies being given by Berkshire Hathaway. There are still questions in regards to the coverage by Berkshire Hathaway where they're saying, they're drawing a line saying we don't cover this, and we're saying they should cover this. So there are those issues. We are not going to wait to iron those out. The idea is to get the building built and then to look back to Berkshire Hathaway for those amounts, whether it's through negotiations or potentially litigation, and to make sure that the association is made as whole as possible. And we've done this with other insurance carriers on other types of situations. When we've done that, usually we use an attorney who does it on a contingent basis, so that they share in whatever is received, but they also are very involved in this because they are trying to get the most money possible. And if we find that the carrier acted either negligently or in bad faith, we're going to address it from that standpoint. And Mark can't speak to this because he'd be put in a very awkward position. But if it were ever ruled that it's bad faith, there are substantial penalties that go along with that, substantial financial penalties that would, probably help, make everyone truly whole again. So we're going to look at all those options. We are not backing off that and not letting guard off without making sure that we get the last dollar that we possibly can get on your behalf. I'm going to start, we're taking this a little bit out of order because Mike actually held up a vacation and messed up his vacation to be here tonight, but it was important enough that both he and we felt that he needed to be here. So if I could, I'd like to ask Mike to speak. Sure.
Okay, good evening. I want to first talk about the estimates that you all received. Those estimates were not meant to be exactly what you guys had. They were basically meant to throw out a scope for you guys to give to your insurance company so you knew where the line was drawn by Berkshire Hathaway as far as what they were covering and what they were not. A lot of that came from requests I've got from a lot of your adjusters who contacted me. So we were trying to get that out there so that you guys could settle your claims individually. So if you get, they were done by the types, so the different types of units you have, that's what those estimates reflect. So some of you guys might have carpet where others have tile, you might have upgraded cabinets. You're not gonna see that. Those are basically a generic estimate to put back the unit for what was there based on a generic estimate, not specific to any of you. So those numbers are not, they're an estimated number, but might not be indicative of what you have. So what you should do with those numbers or that estimate is take it to your insurance company and say, this is the scope. And if they want to write an estimate, if they can do that. If they want to contact me, I can give them what's called an electronic estimate, and they can make any changes to it that fit your specific unit. You guys have any questions on that? Yes,
Just so when I communicate with my insurance company, when I see $65 for a toilet seat, does that mean that it's the toilet seat plus labor?
correct.
What is that?
Yes. So the estimates, so Xactimate is the program that we use to write estimates. It's used by insurance companies, contractors, all across the board. It's meant to include labor and material. And there's some in there for overhead and profit at the end. There's a lot of different things that go into that price, but it's an all-inclusive price.
It's actually the program that most insurance adjusters on the other side will be using also. If you have, whenever you've had a car accident or something like that, they put all the information into a program, it kicks it out and gives you a number that is acceptable to the insurance carrier and to the repair company. That's what Xactimate is for construction costs.
Correct.
I have a question. Why is everyone so underinsured?
I can't answer that question.
Well, somebody- yeah.
We
Well-
had claims before, like I had a flood in that place before, like one of the buildings, fire pipes busted. And it went to the insurance companies, and it was deemed that the management company insurance was covering everything other than paint and carpet.
Yeah.
So I don't know how magically now it's completely reversed 10 years later, and we're
Nothing.
stuck with everything.
Here's what I'll tell you, this is a blanket answer, and I individually, I can't speak to any of your coverages. I don't even know what your policies have, honestly. The only policy I know is the master. But what happens is the insurance company has to look at your bylaws, okay? And that's what drives the coverage. In that instance you're talking about, I have no idea what happened. They probably paid the claim, they overpaid it. But when you're talking about bigger dollars, insurance companies take a closer look at what they're paying, just like anyone would.
Correct, but when we first started these meetings, it was under the assumption that they're putting it back to,
Yeah.
so I don't know how it
Yeah, how did it
magically,
end up this way?
like, did it go to court and you guys battled and?
Well,
then
I
decided
could,
that's
I
the
could
way
speak,
it was?
let me speak to that. So, the way we started our estimate, we're representing the association and technically all of you to try to get the most coverage out of the association's policy so you pay the least amount, okay? So our estimate, when we wrote our original estimate, we included everything, okay? So that was our goal, to go after that and try to get everything we could, okay? So then we started getting pushback on that from the insurance company saying, look at the bylaws, look at this, read this. We've got Steve involved, and he got involved with their counsel because it becomes a legal issue, and I'm not allowed to make legal arguments. I'm not an attorney.
The
Okay.
estimates, they just seem really, really high. Like,
Okay.
I've been in the construction industry for 20 years and in sales, I know exactly how those buildings work. You'll hire an electrician, they'll take a team and they'll sweep the whole floor before the drywall goes up, so they can bounce from floor, the room, and then they'll go up to the second floor, they'll knock that out,
Yeah.
go to the third. And you have it priced like per unit, like they're making special trips to come out to work in that unit. I
The
thought
system,
idea
system's
of-
not perfect, for sure. We use a system because that's what's industry standards. That's what's used in the insurance industry.
But I thought the idea of having one person do the whole thing is supposed to be cheaper.
Well, I think you will get discounts based on using one general contractor, for sure, as opposed to a bunch of different ones. And by the way, the city's not gonna let everyone have their own electrician.
Right.
Once that electrical permit's opened, that guy's doing everything, because they're not gonna let two
Well,
people
let's
have it.
qualify that, doing
Yeah.
everything up to the wire coming into your unit.
Right, but.
Once the wire's into your unit, the things like the plugs and outlets and lights and all
You're
that.
you're still gonna be having an issue with
Right.
pulling the permit, because once the electrician pulls a permit, it's open with the city.
Right.
So for liability reasons, they're not gonna let two electricians work on the same permit.
So is it fair to say those estimates were a little high? They might be a little lower, or you're saying?
It's industry standard. I can't tell you whether it's high or low. It's based off of zip code, and it's updated every quarter.
But Jay's
And it's
gonna,
based off the industry.
Jay's gonna talk to that as well.
Yeah, and that's an estimate, and again, it's not specific to anyone here's unit. It's a general estimate, and what they asked me to do was to provide something that could give everybody and their insurance companies an idea of what their scope was. Okay, it doesn't mean that's the end number, it just means that this is the scope. And all your adjusters, once they see that estimate, they'll know what the scope is. I've already been contacted by a few adjusters, and I've sent them what's called an electronic estimate, okay? What I can do is I send that to them, then they can download it, and then they can change it any way they want to make it your specific unit. So, yes,
I may have missed it, but on the estimate, I did not see your storage units that was down the hall by it's like a 5 by 5 foot.
storage units are part of the associations.
Okay, good.
Yep.
I'll let
Yes.
them know.
Yeah, your estimates are incomplete.
Okay,
Because, well, take for example, the kitchen, if you give everybody a kitchen plus, but there's no sink or countertop, but you're gonna give a $1,380 dishwasher to them.
I'd have to take a look at it. I mean,
Yeah,
again, it's meant for scope. I mean, it's not meant to be what you settle your loss on. You guys gotta settle all your own losses with your insurance companies. That's not what we can do. I mean, it's just meant to be scope. So it shows what the scope of the work is. If something was missed, I mean, we can take a look at that. I doubt we would miss something like that, but I can take a look at it.
The countertop and the sink is pretty big.
Right, right. Yeah, we can take a look at that. I mean, and again, if any of your insurance companies have been contacting me anyways, so if they have questions about those scopes, they can call me. And like I said, I'm happy to send the electronic copies. I mean, we've already done most of the work. If they wanna fine tune them, that's fine. So it helps you guys get resolved quicker if you're not already resolved.
Can you give us your number so we can number?
Sure.
So for
I can,
everybody to know
it's,
that?
they can put it in the email. I mean,
send
my
it out
email
to you.
address and my cell phone.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been sent out previously, but I'll
Okay.
put it in
Yeah.
the email again when it goes out. And the email is gonna go out to everybody in Chandler's Lane, but it'll have all this specific information.
Yes,
Yeah, I agree with that. I noticed too, like in the bathroom, it says there's a vanity, but then I saw nothing that shows that there's a cabinetry below it in the
the
bathroom.
vanity's a package, so that would be the whole
It
package.
includes,
Yeah,
okay, because we shop for vanities, usually just the not. So I just wanna make sure that, like Don says, that we're getting all the cabinets and the different things.
again, these aren't final. It was meant mostly for scope, not for the details, because we wanted your insurance companies to know exactly what they need to include in your estimates as far as the scope. They need to be the ones that finalize the estimate and make it specific to your unit.
So in talking to my adjuster, because I know she's been looking at it, I sent it to her and everything, and she said she's talking to, I don't know, you or.
What's her name?
State Farm, Melissa Schmidt.
Yeah,
Okay, so they're gonna look at that, cause she says, well, we gotta review them all and see if the estimates are too high based on the insurance. So they're gonna be looking at it to adjust it, like they'll adjust it based on.
Yes.
they'll settle with you. They won't, it's none of my business, honestly, but, so they'll
But
take.
they're talking to you initially, you give them the original scopes, and then when they're talking to you, are they gonna be in?
We're not talking any negotiations. All I'm talking about is information passing. So I'm passing information on them so that they can resolve your claim quicker, because when they get an electronic estimate from us,
Right.
the base estimate's there. All they have to do is make sure the details match what you have. So we're not negotiating with any unit
What he's
owners.
done is he's written basic specifications so that they know what to adjust from. So he's given them the basic information they need to be able to work a deal out with you to satisfy you.
Sure.
So what you're saying is at this point, this is what the scope is. It wouldn't grow, it could potentially be less.
Correct.
Based on what we can do.
Well, depending
with getting them.
on how your unit was appointed, because there were people
No,
who
no,
had granite countertops.
I understand, I'm not.
He-
talking
he's
about
saying-
that.
he's
I'm just
saying the
as
scope's
far
not
as the
gonna get any
scope,
bigger.
It's not gonna get any bigger.
Right.
But they may provide interior walls and things like that.
Correct.
So it could be.
Well, from our
From
standpoint,
your standpoint.
I'm sorry, yes.
Right.
We're
So
still
this is the
pushing,
largest scope
pushing
we're gonna
on
see.
them.
So it would only get smaller from here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not gonna get any
And
bigger.
it may be that the building is built, your insurance will pay, and then we're able to work out something more with Berkshire
There would
Hathaway
be a
Guard.
rebate on the back
And then
end.
what we would do is reimburse the owners of record as of the day of the fire, the amounts that were, should be settled for.
What about the estimates, like I have a 1 bedroom, 1 bath and study, and I got an estimate for 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Now, they're telling me they got the same thing, but not get that. I never got my first estimate,
So,
actually, Jay.
so my understanding is there's an exception to, depending on what floor, we talked about this, and I sent you a revised without the second bathroom.
Right, that's the 8 units.
So, I mean, I don't know if she needs a new
They
estimate.
got a
I
new
sent
estimate.
everyone on the list, a revised 8 unit cost without the bathroom, without the second bathroom. If you didn't get it, I'll have to
I'm
get it to
not
you.
getting the mail from you guys.
Well, then I'll have to-
I didn't get the mail about this meeting either.
Well, on the sign-in sheet, if you could take a look at it when you leave to make
I
sure.
sent Jay my new,
I understand, but take a look at the sign-in sheet to make sure your address is correct on there, because all of the addresses that we have are on the sign-in sheet. So that way you can make sure that we have your correct mailing address.
I got that old letter a couple days ago on the yellow paper. That's the right address.
I understand,
I'm not getting
but
anything
everyone,
about-
but if anybody's having trouble getting anything, please take a look at that so that we can make sure that
Well,
everything's accurate.
Also, Kathy's not getting hers either. And she had the same address at the post office ever since she lived in the condo.
Well, the post office is not forwarding things the same way that they should, because some people are getting things weeks later after they've been mailed.
I go daily.
I understand, but they're not delivering though, or they're not placing it for whatever reason, because they are being sent there. If you take a look again at the sign-in sheet, it shows who's still using the property as their mailing address. Some people are getting it, some people aren't. And I'm not sure why. If somebody does not get something, let us know and we'll email it to you, or we'll send it to a different address.
Let me know, and I'll personally take it out to you,
I sent you my address and.
I don't know why you're not getting it, but if you call me enough, I'll bring it to you, like I did last time. I don't want
The new
anybody
estimate?
to go
But
without, yeah.
let's get back on topic though. If somebody's not getting something, please check the sign-in sheet. You'll see where we're sending it, so you'll know what we're doing. If it doesn't have an alternate address, we're sending it to the building. If it has an alternate address, that's where we're sending it. 'Cause it's, candidly, it's off a mailing label program that's tied into our system.
I
Nobody
changed
sits
it
and
way
types
back
them.
at the beginning. I mean,
I understand, but just check that, Liz.
all right, I'll check.
So before you ask a question, I just wanna